Welcome. We bid you welcome. John Clauser, Johnny Metal, the Metal Dad, the five count, as my co-captain here is saying, coming to you from my music corner of the world and from his own music corner of the world that is not on fire. John the Music Nut, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. How are you, my friend?
Well, it's yes, the five count is alive and kicking today.
Five.
I just feel terrible. It's a Sunday as we record this. And our beloved Steelers unfortunately lost to the Browns. So I'm not even going to go into that. All right. So today we continue our episodes literally of turning Japanese, as it were, as we explore the second album by the band E.Z.O. Look at this. Look at this beauty on vinyl here. This is a vinyl cover or album I picked up at a store a few years ago, or a couple years ago. And there's a funny story with this. I saw this at this store. It wasn't the one I normally go to, the Seasick Records. This is a different one. And so I happened to see this, but I was like, well, I don't have a record player, so I couldn't see myself doing it. And then after I left, I thought, oh, you dummy, you should have bought that album. I mean, I'm thinking back to how good the band was. And I was like, oh, you gotta get it. You just gotta go back in. So one day I eventually finally went back just out of curiosity, and I couldn't believe it. It was still in the store. This has been like maybe a good year or more. And I got it. I probably paid 10, $11.
Wow.
It was originally 15, and I think they were having some kind of sale or something, and I got a couple bucks off of it. So I was like, okay, I'll take it. so
It's
so
awesome.
there you
Good
go.
for you.
Yeah. So and then I eventually found the first one, I think, at a record show. But because finding these on CD is not easy. Very, very expensive. Very, very expensive, as they would say. Lots of Japanese yen going to be spent on these CDs if you buy them. But anyway, this album, no chart action, so I can't speak on that. Um, we the one thing we don't have here is the Gene Simmons connection. This time we have production by Stephen Galfus, and I was having to look him up because I'm like, I know his name from somewhere, and I couldn't remember where. Well, he had something to do with Stripers to Hell with the Devil, as well as some Sabotage and Saxon. He was in John Waite, Meatloaf, so he was involved with a lot of different bands. But the fact he was behind the scenes on Stripers to Hell with the Devil was like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. He also did. I think he would also go and do some stuff with Loudness as well. Jody Gray, a co-writer on pretty much all of the album with the band. He would also go on to work with Loudness when Masaki and Hiro would join the band in 1992 when the band would break up. At this point, they're they're on Geffen. They really don't make much of an impact, and they're dropped. We do see the John Kolodner name come up on the back of this, so we have that little addition. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know. Some people like the John Kolodner touch, some people don't. John, I have a feeling you have a lot to say about this album, so I'm going to turn this one to you, my friend, and let you have at it.
All right. Thank you, John. As far as the John Kalodner thing, it depends on the band, as far as I'm concerned. Geffen Records, what the heck did you do to Masaki's vocals? What did you do? That was the thing that distinguished this band, was his sensual vocals. Now he's singing in a higher register, the sensuality's gone, and now he sounds irreplaceable with a lot of other singers from that era. And in turn, it makes this album sound very undistinguishable from a lot of other bands of that era. The songs aren't as strong overall, and I think part of it is that you don't have Adam Mitchell here. You don't have Jamie St. James here. the band was getting more involved, and maybe they weren't at that point yet where they can write a lot of strong songs. Not saying that there isn't a few good ones on here. There certainly is. Now, we have Stephen Golfus here on production. This production is more of its time. You do hear the difference between the instruments, but you do hear a lot more effects. And the drums definitely sound like 89 as well.
Yeah.
Not like it's I liked the debut, the recording on that better. I don't think this is a bad production, but I don't think it's as strong as the Gene Simmons production on the debut from 87. Now, same band. We still got Misaki, Yamada on vocals, Shoyo Ida on guitar, Taro Takahashi on bass, Hiro Homa on drums. Now, the songs starts out with Love Junkie. First thing you think it sounds like a new singer, but it's Misaki. So doesn't sound the same. Decent opener, nothing spectacular. You got those gang vocals in the choruses. The choruses here sound very Slaughter, Lynch Mob from the next year. Striper sounds a little like Striper in those choruses. Very hair metal. Nightcrawler. This is pretty good. This could have been a single. I could have heard this on AOR. It's catchy, yet it's evil. I like this track a lot. Nice guitar solo. One thing I could say about Shoyo Ida on here, he really grew as a guitar player. His solos are the highlight of this album, in my opinion. He really improved for the first album. I'm not saying he didn't play well on that first album. And another thing I will definitely say positive about this album, the band still sounds hungry. The performances are strong. The songs, well, we'll go into that. The title track, Fire Fires, mid-tempo. You got a strong lyrical solo here. It sounds a little bit like Soul Asylum by the Cult off of Sonic Temple, which came out the month before this. That's what it reminds me of. And then it has this breakdown where it goes acoustic. That's a little more Zeppelin. But, it's decent. I like it. Wild Talk, that doesn't leave much for me at all. I mean, the riffing is good, but here's another thing you hear on here. A lot of songs end with a fade out. Too many. Which again, it takes away from the personality of the album. Makes it undistinguishable. Burn Down the Night, same thing. Formulaic, mid-tempo, studio effects with the echo, very, very obvious. Another good solo song, Black Moon. Black Moon I like more. That's heavier. You got the gang vocals on there. You got the little bits of solos with the bass and the drums. I like Shoyo's solo on that. It's heavier and no fade outs. So
That's
this is a
true.
little different. It's heavier. Good. One of the strongest tracks on the album. Back to Zero. Should have been called House of Pain because they say House of Pain in the chorus.
Yeah.
Another riff. This riff sounds awfully familiar. I'm trying to figure out where I've heard this before. You hear that on a few of these songs. It's okay. Cold Blooded. Not to be confused with Rick James' Cold Blooded. This is sensual, like that song is, but this is where I miss the sensual Misaki. Now he just sounds like another singer, a good singer, but he doesn't sound as distinctive as before. This could have been so much better. So then we go with She's Riding the Rhythm. Again, formulaic 80s, late 80s hair metal track. Nothing to write home about on this. It's okay. Streetwalker. This is a little better. We do got the sound effects, and the gang vocals are deeper on this one to give it more of that street feel. So it's a little better. good song, not great. Million Miles Away was the video. I can see why. It's one of the 2 or 3 best songs on the album. It may be the best song on the album. This is a good track. It does sound a lot like something from Dawkins' 1987 album, Back for the Attack. But I'm not saying that as a criticism. I'm saying
Right.
this is very good. This
Yeah.
is catchy. It's a cool song. Again, we got a good hook with that circular guitar riff in there. It the choruses are very hair metal, but again, I think the song is strong. I could see why they put this out as the video. Here's another thing about the video. Bigger hair, no more to makeup anymore. Now they look like the prototypical late 80s hair metal band. The performance, the videos, the quick camera shots. It's basically all the funky lights going on. And then to make them look badass, they show them walking in the streets, in the graffiti lined streets. And it just doesn't really, it's just so 89. That's
Yeah.
just what it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
could have did something with this. They could have made a better video. But again, they're taking away their personality. Now they just look like some other band. Whereas before they look like a force to be reckoned with. They sounded
Yeah.
evil. They sounded cool. Like I said, performances strong, songs not as good. Production, little of its time, doesn't take away too much from it. I give this a 5.
Okay. Ooh. Ooh.
It's
Ooh.
not some.
Okay.
This is what I'd say in comparison to the first album. I don't own either of these albums, or I'd be showing them. Right.
Right.
The first album, if I could find that on CD at a reasonable price, that bad boy is mine. Because that one I know is going to grow on me over time. But I also have a sense of what's not going to, and this is one that wouldn't. So this isn't one that I would buy. Maybe
Sure.
if I saw it for $5, which would be a miracle, maybe I would.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think this album really stands up. I think that Geffen got too involved. You had a good formula going on here, and outside of the guitar playing, nothing else here is an improvement. It's not as good. So there you go.
Yeah.
5 out of
Okay.
10.
Well, this made me think about this. So I'm thinking back, okay, 1989. So who else would have been on Geffen about this time? Let's see. There
Guns N'
was this,
Roses?
there was this little band called Guns N' Roses. There was also another band that was riding high on an album that came out in 1987 called Whitesnake.
Yes.
Let's see who else would have been on Geffen. That's
Y&T was on there, but again,
yeah.
they were
But
still
I'm thinking
bands
like
that
there
were
was
huge.
bands that were like really getting huge at that time, and that like Guns N' Roses and Whitesnake were all over the place,
That's true.
back then, and so bands like E.Z.O unfortunately probably just got you know thrown by the wayside. Wasn't Aerosmith? Aerosmith was coming out on Geffen, I think, at that point,
Yeah, Pump would have
because
been out a few months later.
Kalodner was involved with that.
Right.
So you got some pretty heavy hitters, and then you get this band, and they're just yeah. I agree. I agree with a lot of what you said here, because this album did not have that uniqueness that the first one had.
Right.
Uh, Masaki's vocals, you're right. They sounded like Manuro from Loudness, but with a gruffer voice.
Yes.
There was
I
you
agree.
still because you have the Japanese. He sounded a lot more Japanese on this one, whereas he didn't sound like that quite so much. He had his own style, and they made him singing a little more different and more polished sounding. They were trying to make those hits, the big singles and whatever, and more commercial sounding instead of that, the stuff like you would hear with like Desiree, or some of the pounding of that you got with like Destroyer, or those
Yes.
jugular riffs like House of a Thousand Pleasures. So for me, I kind of actually, before I go into this, I want to mention something that our good friend Martin Popoff mentioned in this about these. Now,
Hi, Martin.
So Martin gave the first album a 6. He ranked it a 6. He actually ranks Fire Fire a 7. So go figure that one out. Um, yeah. So whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know. But he goes into some reasons now that I think I will kind of expound upon. So, Love Junkie, does this song reach for the jugular like House of a Thousand Pleasures does? No, it does not. But for me, there was a catchiness about the riff that got in here and just earwormed, and I just could not get it out of my head. I liked a lot of the atmosphere that the song kind of brought. I kind of enjoyed the song. Yeah, it's a little longer. I believe. Let's see. Does it have the times? No, it does not. So, I thought not a bad song. You like you say, you get the gang vocals. Who's on gang vocals, by the way, on this? Let's see. Background vocals. So Masaki, Taru, Hiro, Shoyo, Steve Grimmett.
Oh yeah, from Grim Reaper.
Of course, Jody Gray, who co-wrote just about everything on here. Stephen Galfus, James Pallas, Noah Barron, Ty the Weed Burgess, and a bunch of other people that I don't know. But Steve Grimmett, who would go on to Onslaught, because by this point, I believe Grim Reaper has gone by the wayside.
Right.
So yeah, so Steve Grimmett enters the picture because he would work with a couple of these guys behind the scenes. Nightcrawler. To me, other than the chorus, I think if you take Masaki's vocals out and put Vince Neil's in this, you have a Motley Crue song.
Yeah, I agree with that.
The only big difference is when the chorus comes out, Vince could never spit Nightcrawler. Masaki spits that out with such venom,
right?
That I just like, yeah, I dig that. But yeah, I felt that, and I think there's a lot of songs on here. It had that they felt a little Motley Crue-ish or other 80s band. But this one, to me, there was some Motley Crue like riffs in this one.
Mm-hmm.
Fire, slow throbbing groove. I like that transition into the acoustic section. I thought that was kind of nice. Mm-hmm. I thought some of Masaki's vocals here I thought did well. Wild Talk. One of the things that really caught me with this one was the extremely busy chorus of what's going on with the band. You got this, you got Hero going to he's like going nuts back there. To me, a very hungry sound. I another song kind of got earworm, got a little infectious. Burn Down the Night, I thought was I liked it. Down, 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 down. I like that opening riff. I thought it was pretty nice. I thought the solo section had some nice intricacies to it, so I thought that was pretty cool. Good side closer. Side 2 opens up with Black Moon. I thought again, a punchy opener. Was it as infectious as Destroyer? Yeah, maybe not so much.
Right.
I kind of felt like in that solo section, it almost felt like a little bit of like a Rush feel.
Yes.
Because you got the drums going on, you got Taro doing some intricate bass stuff. It to me sounded very Rush like.
Like YYZ.
Where they all did
a little solo there in between.
Yeah, a little bit.
In the bridge.
Yeah. So I kind of felt that going on with that. So I thought that was a good side opener. Back to Zero with the Jimmy Page like opening. I kind of felt that, although I don't think you would hear stuff like that until later, like on the Coverdale Page album, but it just seemed very, very Jimmy Page like in that opening. And I like that verse riff to the song. I thought that was a good riff. Cold Blooded. again, still missing that sensual Masaki vocal, but it is a softer, but still a driving song. Um, she's riding the rhythm. Yes, I'm speeding along through the songs because again, lyrically, there's not much to talk about here. It's pretty much anything that you could hear in the 80s. And there's nothing very deep here. There's definitely no Shakespearean kind of things any going on here. She's riding the rhythm. Was it me or did I detect a little bit of a Kiss riff in there somewhere? Like the da 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 da.
I Want You.
Yeah, a little bit, maybe just a little
Yeah,
bit. So maybe they wanted to thank Gene Simmons for that. I don't know.
there you go.
But again, like you said, formulaic, pretty much everything that you would hear in the 80s. Streetwalker, again, I felt like it was another kind of a Motley Crue like song,
Mhm.
very glam metal. There's not much really different there in formulaic. Million Miles Away, I think hands down, it's probably my favorite song on the entire on this album. And don't get me wrong, this album started really growing on me a lot. I really started liking this one quite a bit because the riffs and a lot of, even though the lyrics are kind of goofy, a lot of it there were some good hooks in there, and the hooks started hooking into the brain a little bit for me. But yeah, A Million Miles Away, I just thought was a great closer, strongest song on the album. But yeah, I'm with you. Geffen, why did you make them? Why did you take all the uniqueness out of them? Whose fault was that? You know, One thing I did learn about each band member had a there was like a little bit of a like on Led Zeppelin 4, everybody had like a symbol and everybody had like their own thing. Well, apparently everybody in the band had like a little thing. Taru was the earth part of the band. Masaki was the wind. Shoyo was the fire. Hiro was the water. I don't know much more about it from there. That's just what I was reading somewhere online. I thought that was quite interesting. Um, but yeah, the band would break up. I don't know if there was much of a tour with this one. Obviously, they were dropped from Geffen. So I don't know, John. If you got some, I don't know if you have any touring ideas or thoughts on this one, or if you have any rebuttals towards
No
anything I said.
rebuttals. I'm glad that you appreciate the album. What
Yeah.
would you rank it?
Oh yeah, I guess I should rate it. Because I gave the first one a 9.
Yes.
Um, I mean, I think because of the lack of originality and the formulas of this song, I probably would only give this about a 7, maybe 7.25, 7.5.
Okay.
But that's because but there's still a lot of it that I like. But is it as unique and as stand out as the first album? Not by a long shot. But there was potential. There was potential that they could have grown out of, but I have a feeling within the next year or two, if they tried to do a third album, it would have been like grunge, or it would have just been following all the masses. And obviously they just decided to call it a day. So
Let me ask you this too, John. When did you get into this album? Because I never heard this album until this week.
see, I'm trying to remember if I had this one back in the day. And honestly, I don't remember. I
Okay.
remember I remember starting to get into the band again a few years ago. And then of course I would find this in my record store and I had to get it then.
Right.
So I had it in my iTunes for, I don't know, a few years, I guess. That you could find the album on YouTube, and then I eventually became available on iTunes and eventually Spotify. So I don't this album didn't wasn't in my DNA quite like the first one was. But
Okay.
I see, again, the memory's fading because I may have had this back in the day. I just can't remember.
Okay.
So
Let me ask one more question.
yes,
Okay. This isn't really related so much to E.Z.O. When
yes.
things, when everything was shut down in 2020, did you start going back into your memory bank and thinking about bands that you were about to get into and then you didn't, and then you thought, you know what, maybe I should go rediscover this band now, or maybe I should go and fill in some of the gaps of bands that I really like and now I'm really really getting into.
Yeah, I mean, I think I started doing that a little bit
I know
because
I did.
yeah, I think we have to blame Pete Pardo for that.
And thank
Because
to, I mean,
and
thank you,
thank you.
Pete.
And thank you. Yes, absolutely. Thank you. No, I was just kidding about the blaming.
Yeah, yeah.
My wallet probably blames him, but no, I certainly thank him because it really you start digging into this stuff. I'm like, there's some catalogs out there that's really worth getting into.
Mm-hmm.
Um, um, I think of bands like, oh, I don't know, like Raven. That would be a band. I mean, Judas Priest probably. Um, I'm sure there's probably others that comes to mind.
I meant Priest
Thankfully,
was one for me
thankfully,
too.
which one?
Priest was
Oh,
one for me
Priest.
too. Like I had a lot of the older albums
Yeah,
during the pandemic. I bought some of the albums after Painkiller, which I didn't have.
right, right. See, I was a fan. See, I'd been a fan long ago, up until life kind of changed for me. I
Right.
mean, I was a fan up to Jugulator. I had everything up to Jugulator. Heck, I even had Glenn Tipton's solo album.
Oh, Baptism of Fire.
The
Okay,
Baptism of Fire. Yeah, I
that
even
was
had
good.
that at one point. I don't have it now. I don't know.
Right.
But I had it. I bet I listened to it maybe once or twice. I
Okay.
don't remember. I don't remember much about the album, but I had it. But I think I'm trying to think who else I did that with. Probably maybe Alex Harvey,
Okay.
maybe a little bit. I don't know. Like I said, there's probably other bands that I'm just not. It's just not coming to me off the top of my head. But yeah, it just watching shows like what Pete does on Sea of
Mhm.
Tranquility, ranking the catalogs and thinking, okay, how can I do this in my own thing? In what I already have. So I would start listening to albums and in bands catalogs, and I'll think, okay, how this is how I would rank this. And then I start going back and like bands like Raven, I would eventually go for all the albums. And I started thinking, okay, so Raven, okay, so the Pack is back and Stay Hard. Yeah, they're kind of low on their totem pole. At the time, 1994's Glow wasn't quite so high because it was kind of grungy, kind of different, but yet 2020's Metal City was like, whoa, I love that. And I loved Extermination. Can't go wrong on the first one. So it's just trying to figure out, but I really have to revisit all those because now I think a lot differently. So bands like E.Z.O, that first album, the debut, obviously that never changed. That never changed with me.
Right.
Fire, yeah, okay, that's changed a little bit over time as I've gotten to listen to it, but I just don't have the history that I can remember anyway. So
Gotcha. And I was the same way too. Like I was I'm going completely different genres here. I liked Van Morrison. I went deep into Van Morrison because a lot of
mm-hmm,
those CDs all of a sudden were really cheap,
mm-hmm,
reasonable. And a lot of the 90s, 2000 CDs I picked up then. I loved John Hyatt. I had maybe half of his albums.
yeah,
Now I have nearly all of them because a lot of them I was able to find reasonable. And some of them I bought used and some of them I bought new. And now I'm even a bigger fan of him. And I was already a big fan. It took me till I was 40, but by the time the pandemic hit, I was going to be
mm-hmm,
close to 49. So that was when I really dug deep. I dug deep into Steve Earle at that time. Because
yeah,
before, for the longest time, the only album I had was Copperhead Road. Now, I mean, I could see them right from here. I got 12 of his albums, and there's so many more he has.
yeah,
But I was also filled in my accept gaps because I didn't have the self-titled album or I'm a Rebel or Breaker.
mm-hmm,
I didn't have the later Judas Priest albums that I mentioned. So I didn't have anything by Prong. So I started buying some Prong. Same thing with Corrosion of Conformity. I liked them, but I never just, and
Yeah,
then I started buying albums by them. Helmet,
sure,
same thing.
sure.
So yeah, so there was good things that came out of it. I started, and that's not just, and I think millions of us out there, excuse me, we couldn't go out and spend money, so we started doing home projects.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I definitely put a lot more money in my home at that point too. So yeah, but musically there was definitely a lot of time to find stuff that you wanted to. It was in the back of your brain. You probably never even talked about it. But then you
Mm-hmm.
started buying and you're like, oh, now I could do this. I didn't have I liked remember Michael Penn, the
Okay.
song
Yeah. Yeah.
No
Yeah. Yeah.
song No Myth.
Mm-hmm.
That's an album I always wanted to pick up. I picked
Yeah.
it up then, and then picked up his second album. So yeah, I mean, I probably spent more money on physical product that year than any other year. And
Right.
I mean, I still buy a lot, but
Yeah.
that year I was just like, well, forget it. I mean, I'm going to enjoy. If I can't go to see shows, if I'm not going to be able to see people so much,
Right.
I'm going to enjoy. I'm going to try to make the most of this, even though it's not a good situation. Any negative you try to turn into a positive. So,
Sure.
so that's what went through my head. So, and I always wanted to ask you, this is all off the cuff here, folks. I mean, I never asked John this before. So I just figured that came
Yeah.
into my head while John and I were talking here. So
Yeah.
that was
And
good
and
thing to discuss.
and just like I talked about how we think, Pink P Pardo, but then you get groups like the Contrarians, and then we start meeting people doing their calls,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden you get, this is how you got the my music corner,
Right.
because and the Grants Rock Warehouses, the Ryan's Vinyl Destinations, the
Tim's Vinyl Confessions. Great channel.
got to give him some love, just like I gave Mike Ladano some in his Grab a Stack of Rock uh, some love last week. What's another one? Bicycle Legs, Rock Daydream Nation. Definitely got to give some love to Rock Daydream Nation. It's opened the doors to, one, just for us, just for people like John and I, who we have developed a very good rapport with each other
Yes.
over the last year, or year and a half, and now you find these people that are very like-minded, and now we want to talk about bands like E.Z.O, like a Wasp, like Armored Saint. We got a good one in December coming up. I'm still not gonna tell you, but
Some of you figured it out.
some of you might have figured it out, and maybe you got scared. I don't know. Maybe you think I'm just teasing about, anyway. But there's going to be a good one in December we're going to talk about, and I look forward to that. We don't get who gets to talk about some of these bands. You
Right.
know, we, this is, and we have and if you guys didn't figure out from watching the Wasp Wednesday series, I kind of like Blackie and the guys.
Oh yeah.
maybe just a little bit. And so but anyway, so off good fun little tangent to go off on, and that's a good thing. Um you know one thing I want to talk about with the band is, you know okay, so the band breaks up, so E.Z.O breaks up, and there's this other Japanese band, Loudness, and they're kind of in need of a singer and a drummer, actually,
Mhm.
because by this point Mike Becerra has left and has gone off to do whatever he was doing after he tried to Americanize Loudness with his sound. um, so Masaki joins Loudness and is on Loudness for about 8 years. um, uh, the original drummer Munetaka, he leaves. He also had left the band, so Hiro comes on board, and he's with the band until the same time. And then by 2000, there's a push to get the original band back together, and they do. And of course, the band is still together, except for Munetaka unfortunately passed away from liver cancer. So I can't remember who took over, but I know it's not Hero. I know it's a different drummer now. But anyway, um, But Loudness is another band. If I didn't have to spend so much Japanese yen to get their CDs, I would love to go do a deep dive on their stuff. But so much of the stuff is not available on streaming services, and it's just not easy to come by. So, but yeah. Anyway, this was a um, this was a fun little quick two album series on this band E.Z.O. There's the boys without the makeup and the crazy hair. But you know, again, if you're gonna pick one of the two, I would say a lot of people will probably pick the first one.
Mhm.
I one thing I meant to mention was I need to get the guy's name correct here. That posted this. I said something about this on Butch Jones's Facebook group. Now, Butch Jones, of course, if you know him from the Sea of Tranquility, the Hudson Valley Squares. So let's see. I'm trying to get to that post. There we are. Okay. So we learned something very interesting about one of the members because there's not much information about Shoyo or Taro, after the band breaks up. So it turns out Shoyo would go on to open sushi restaurants in he started in New York, then he also goes to Miami Beach, and he's a well-known, renowned sushi chef. So I think there's even a sushi dish that I think is named after something with E.Z.O. In one of the restaurants he had done something with. So he at least tries to still acknowledge it in some way, shape, or form. But Butch Jones is a huge E.Z.O. fan.
Nice.
Talks about both them and Flatbacker as much as he possibly can. But yeah, it was a fellow on Butch's group called David Clark, named David Clark. He was the one that told me about Shoyo. So still don't know I think Taru kind of played a little bit here and there, but he really didn't do much prolifically. So I don't really know what happened to him. Masaki plays bass in a band called Fire Sign, I believe it's called. And Hiro is kind of doing his own thing. I can't remember the name of what his group was called, but Chris Allo was another one, big fan of. Chris also you see on Sea of Tranquility quite often. Would love to see reissues of both of these albums. Maybe we'll get one, maybe we won't. Who knows? The Rock Candy people would I think would have a field day with it, but maybe there's a reason why they haven't reissued them. But anyway, they're wonderful to revisit if you can at least get them on iTunes and Spotify. And that's a great way to go. John, have you got anything else you want to throw out about this, or have you got something else you need to talk about as far as what to look for or go for?
Oh, well, they toured.
Oh, yes, thank you.
You're welcome. All right.
We got off on all those other tangents. I completely forgot
Yeah.
about the touring thing.
Yeah. It's all good, man. We got each other's backs. 18 tour dates. 16
Okay.
and 89, 2 and 90, all in the United States. As far as the songs played off the album, at one point or another, they hit every song off this album. They hit this album hard. They were
Yeah.
only playing like between 2 and 4 songs from the debut on these dates. As
Hmm.
far as their touring goes, and we'll get into some of the bands they were touring with too. Some of these bands you will know, and some of these bands will be like, "Oh, I forgot about them. They were pretty good." The New Ritz in New York, New York. Back at Hammer Jackson, Baltimore. Toad's Place in New Haven, Connecticut. Omni Club in Oakland, California. The Palace in Los Angeles, California. Backstage Club in Houston, Texas. Dallas City Nights in Dallas, Texas. Bogarts. We've talked about Bogarts plenty. Cincinnati, Ohio. Blondies in Detroit. Spankies in St. Paul, Minnesota. The Metro in Chicago, Illinois. Back at Hammerjacks. Back at unknown venue in Baltimore. I'm wondering if that was another night at Hammerjacks. Maybe.
Could be.
Saratoga Winners in Cohoes, New York. The Channel in Boston, Massachusetts, and Jezebel's in Anaheim, California. Now, who did they tour with? Well, that first show with at the New Ritz, they played with Skid Row,
Huh.
who are
Okay.
about to explode with that album with the Youth Gone Wild and I Remember You and 18
Yep.
in Life and
Yep.
other strong tracks on there. Hammerjacks, the first show they played with Ty Ketto. You remember Ty
Wow.
Ketto?
Yes, I
They were
do.
good. They were
Yeah.
good. I actually saw them at M3 8 years ago. They still sounded good.
Wow.
The
That's cool.
singer looked. I don't know his name. He looked great. Um,
Hmm.
Toad's Place. They played with Flesh, who I don't know, but I know Extreme. They were on that bill too, and they were pushing the first album.
Yeah.
Okay, the Palace. Now these bands I don't know. Power Mad and World War III.
I feel like I've heard the name Power Mad, but
Okay,
World War III, no.
and finally Bogarts, Blondies, Spankies, and the Metro. They played with Dirty Looks.
All right.
Our favorite singer for hire, Jason McMaster, is now singing
Yep.
Dirty Looks.
Yep.
Saw them
There
two
you
months
go.
ago. They sounded great.
Yeah. There you go. All right.
There's your
That's
tour
cool.
dates. That's
That's
right.
cool. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's really cool. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Taiketo I remember, but yeah, the Power Mad, yeah, and World War III, yeah, that's that got I got nothing on those two. But
Yeah.
wow, that's awesome. Well, there you go. Well, yeah. It's a shame that I when I lived in Maryland, I lived about two and a half hours or so from Baltimore. So, and again, unless you have the internet, you didn't have the internet in 1989.
Right.
And so unless you just were like on a mailing list, which I wouldn't have known how to get onto something like that at a place like Hammerjacks, um, you didn't know about these bands. You didn't know about these kind of things. And there's certainly nobody's going to come down to the little podunk town I was living in. At least we didn't have any clubs that would have brought something like that. So yeah, you weren't going to get anything like that.
Right.
I think the only other way I would have heard of that would have been, like reading like Metal Edge or something like that had bands and their tour dates and stuff like that. That's how I learned about. I could have gone to see Mr. Big up at Hammerjacks once. Um, the only problem was in 1991 or 1992 or whatever time of the year it was. Again, you don't have the internet, and see, dummy me didn't think of it being a venue where you had to buy tickets ahead of time. So I just go up thinking I can get in line and think, well, maybe first come, first serve, you pay whatever cover at the door and then you're in, right? Yeah, it doesn't work that way. And drove up there for nothing.
I
I
remember you
wasn't
telling me this now. Okay.
wasn't able to get into that. And the opening band for that was a band called Tall Stories with Steve Augeri.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had discovered that. And that album is like one of my top 15 albums of all time, that solo album, that first our first debut album from them. I love that album to this day. But yeah, I didn't get to go see the show because it was sold out, and I didn't know you had to buy tickets ahead of time. So there you go. Plus I got lost in Baltimore trying to find it because again, 1991, 1992, you don't have a thing called GPS.
Right.
You have directions that were probably just given to me or a travel agency or something, but some of them were just literally just told to me, and I'm just trying to remember them by memory, which didn't work very well. So yeah. Anyway, so all that to say, yeah, thank good. That's one good thing that came out of the internet. At least I could keep up with stuff like that.
Right.
Anyway, so there you go, folks. I hope you enjoyed our two episode look at the band E.Z.O. I hope these albums brings back some good memories for you. If you were into these bands back in the day, we both had a good time with the first album. I certainly had a good time with the first album, and I know John has he has maybe not so much of a like, but maybe give it a little time. But anyway, it's still we still hey, we can't always agree, and that's a good thing. We
That's
don't
right.
want to, it's music is all in how you hear it sometimes. I'm pointing to my head. Anyway, but it's good stuff, and we have a fun time doing these things, and we hope it shows on the screen as you guys are watching this. So there you go. Next week, we're going to have a wrestling show. We're going to get the boys from the North and South Rock and Metal Connection together, and John and all of us are going to have, or at least some of us are anyway. We're going to talk about Survivor Series next week. We're going to review that show, and I'll put that one out right away. So unless we just come up with something on the fly to do for a Wednesday show, you won't see a Wednesday show from us until into December. Like I said, we've got a band that we're going to be we're going to be hitting, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be a 4-week series, and I think you'll like it. Like I said, we've already teased a few things about them, and maybe some of y'all might figure it out. So anyway, for my co-captain John, the music. Now, by the way, John, what kind is there any stuff that we should be looking for you out aside from this one?
Um, yeah, I filmed some shows with the Contrarians that haven't aired yet. We did one on King Crimson's 1995 album Thrack. We had a panel show on that.
Okay.
We also had a smaller panel show on who invented grunge. That should be fun. That was a fun one to do. It'll be fun to watch that when that comes out. And that one was Reed Little, Martin Popoff, and myself.
Mm-hmm.
And uh this coming Tuesday, like this isn't going to be live. This will come out later. We have a panel going on, and Grant Arthur is going to be hosting the panel on the Contrarians, and we're going to be talking about Cheap Trick's 1983's album Next Position Please,
Okay.
which my opinion has changed a little bit on from in the last few weeks listened to this from before. So I like
Okay.
it more now. Let's just put it that way.
Okay.
Um, we got them going on. I got a show coming up with Peter Kerr, Rock Daydream Nation. I think I already discussed it on here. Our favorite songs that got bigger when they were featured in movies. That's going to be coming out soon.
Okay.
Because Peter just let me know about that yesterday. And I got a bunch of stuff coming up on Grant's Rock Warehouse in December. I think we're talking about 4 shows that we're going to do. Uh,
Ooh.
a bunch of us, Byron Bolt, Ernesto Ramos, Daryl Collins, Grant Arthur, and myself. So, excuse me, we're going to do Wall Punchers 3, just to let you know that.
So
Well,
is any songs from the Fire album going to make Wall Punchers 3?
no, no, I wouldn't go that far. I try to pick song. I mean, they E.Z.O never crossed over. I try to pick songs that a lot of people would know.
Oh, I know. I'm just.
And because it's in December, I'll have a few Christmas ones in there. That I
Oh,
could
there you
do.
go. You got to get Christmassy there.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So other than me, I mean, I think I pretty much only have like one other thing out there that's not on my own channel because I just haven't been able to do it. But I was just on Peter Kerr's channel talking about Jimmy Barnes
Jimmy Barnes.
and his first album called Body Swerve. So it was kind of like my first time listening to this album, and so I was able to give him some thoughts on that. That you can watch on Rock Daydream Nation. So and that's pretty much the only thing that I can plug that I'm on right now. I just haven't been able to really have time to make for other people's shows. So I'm sorry. But yes, I wanted to give Tim some love again. Good friend of the channel. So I appreciate Tim and what he does out there just as much as I did with Mike Ladano. And don't worry, Grant and Contrarians will be wearing y'all shirt soon too. So anyway, for my co-captain John the Music Nut, John Clauser, Johnny Metal the Metal Dad, 5 counts alive and well. We will see you soon next week when we talk a little bit of wrestling. And let's just also say this. I hope y'all have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Peace out.
Absolutely. Keep riding those hellacious acres, and we'll see you soon.
Ooh.